Years ago, I had the thought of coming to Finland, and if possible, completely incognito, not just to get to know the country, but especially to be part of 5 major Olympic Games that I believed were taking place in Kaczynski. A few years ago, I admired the Finnish fighters in Berlin and their fights for freedom during the World War and at the end of the World War, including the name of the Marshal. Back then, I could never have dreamed that fate would lead me to Finland under these circumstances. The war we are now facing together was neither intended by Germany, nor, I can say this openly, prepared for. If we had imagined this war as a possibility, then the preparations would have been more thorough, better, more practical, and more purposeful. The war in which we now find ourselves together was neither foreseen, nor, I may say, prepared by Germany. If we had imagined this war to be possible, the preparations would have been more thorough, better, more practical, more expedient. We perhaps believed in the possibility of a conflict in Europe if certain states were to seek to perpetuate the Treaty of Versailles. But I had strong hope that it would also succeed here, simply through the power of reason and the realization that impossible conditions can also remain impossible, and that this could lead to peaceful revisions, because I had set myself a very ambitious social program. I myself rose from very difficult beginnings in my people, and I had no other life goal than to implement a very ambitious social program and also a large complementary cultural program. I dedicated myself to these tasks, and also a large complementary cultural program. I dedicated myself to these tasks. I can truly say that Providence has determined otherwise, and after the necessity arose to take up arms for the freedom of my own people, I was happy, as fate had determined that I should take this step. The development of the political situation has only made it possible since June 1940 to confront the clearly looming danger from the German side, to make decisions in this regard, and to make binding resolutions. This decision led to the step that I not only do not regret having taken, but that I am now infinitely happy about having taken. The struggle has shown the great danger Europe faced. If I had known Bolshevik preparations, the decision might have been harder. I would confront inevitable dangers, taking on hardships myself. This decision has now, for the second time in our history, brought the German and Finnish people together in a fight against the same enemy. Even the first joint struggle, in which today's anniversary saw its great personality commit to the Finnish people for the first time, has created bonds that are lasting. I am convinced that the second struggle will strengthen these bonds for all time, because we cannot avoid the realization that no matter how the victory turns out, there can be no peace without victory. There will be a victory, no matter how that victory may look. Of course, the danger in the East still remains lurking somewhere. And I therefore believe that, looking far into the future, a whole number of European peoples have a common interest in always watching this danger with a vigilant eye, and if necessary, confronting it with a watchful mind. Now I have been destined by fate and providence. I have been destined to be the leader, not only of the German people, but also of the East, which was dangerous, but also dangerous for the German Wehrmacht. I am now happy in this capacity to extend my congratulations to the Marshal of Finland today, not only on my own behalf, but especially on behalf of all German soldiers. who look with genuine admiration at their Finnish comrades. It is so easy for us to speak of friendship with the Finnish army when we have such brave allies and such a courageous people on our side. I may also speak on behalf of the entire German people, for we too have a people's army today, and the German Reich is a people's state. The Wehrmacht and the people are one with us. The Wehrmacht and the people are one with us. The entire German people think at this moment, just as I'm speaking here, it admires the Finnish soldiers. It admires the Finnish people, and it also admires the commander. On your 75th birthday, I would like to extend my heartfelt congratulations from the entire German people, its Wehrmacht, and myself. I would also like to express my gratitude for the hospitality that I and my gentlemen have enjoyed here. And I would like to conclude with just one wish, that you continue to hold on to your own homeland, your people, but also to us and our common causes for many, many years to come. I have regretted so much that we could not help the Greek people in their first struggle for freedom 2 years ago. But it was. And a second dry war is not feasible. And I'm very happy that we are now, for the second time, finally able to engage in the fight against an opponent who would win again, struggle again, but who would unite our two nations.
But we were killing. We are bound in the West, and a second dry stab is the escape spent. And I am now very happy with what we already have. In the end, we can take on an opponent who wants to win, but such a struggle would only destroy our small nations, and there is no place for that. I know what is coming in any case. Everything is in the plan, no matter how heavy it is. Whether it naturally brings Indian gold, I can assure you that whatever happens, German soil is absolutely reliable and unshakable under much shame, and that is what has happened. And the talking points, the shell colleagues, and those who see more than just the only conceivable view, they must also be fought for. I can't understand why no generation can live at all with me. It comes every 25 years, close to where the old animals are, at least not self-determined, that they look up to the old for the people, and that they have the luck to admire such a Russia. I would like to express my most respectful thanks for these wishes, which are for me and for the Finnish armed forces one of the greatest honors that my heart and my thoughts could not underestimate. That made me reassess my own heart and my true thoughts, and deeply, carefully, and thoroughly consider my personal feelings and emotions. I sincerely thank you for the beautiful honorary gifts that are personally intended for me. These gifts will serve as a lasting reminder of today's hard struggle for the highest values of spiritual and material culture, a fight that we are allowed to lead alongside the strong and powerful German Wehrmacht. The significance and value of the honor bestowed upon me is highlighted by the presence of the Reich Chancellor here among us today. That the Supreme Commander of the German Wehrmacht himself wanted to convey this happy and important message brings not only the greatest joy to me and all of us, but it is also an honor that we feel deeply
I especially appreciate that you, Mr. Chancellor, found the opportunity to make this journey, especially in these days, when the powerful and brilliant blows of German leadership, German men's hearts, and German guards bring us closer to the hope of a far-reaching decision. So I will conclude my expression of respectful gratitude with the wish that during this year the good weapons of the just cause may be granted the opportunity to neutralize the plague lords of Bolshevik barbarism.
To neutralize the brotherly united fighters may bring peace to their nations and salvation to all of Europe from a danger that has loomed like a nightmare at the eastern borders for more than 2 decades, a very great danger, perhaps the greatest. To achieve this, it is essential to consider the historical context and the geopolitical implications of such actions. The brotherly united fighters, who have been a symbol of resistance and unity, play a crucial role in this scenario. Their efforts are not just about military might, but also about fostering a sense of hope and resilience among the people. This potential peace could lead to a new era of cooperation and prosperity for the nations involved. We didn't quite know how monstrous this strength would be. We wouldn't have guessed it during the Winter War. Understanding the magnitude of this danger is vital for all stakeholders. During the Winter War, we wouldn't have guessed that. Of course, we had the impression that they were well equipped, but just as they appeared in the picture, there's no doubt about what they had in their shield. It's clear that they had the most monstrous armor imaginable. If someone had told me that a state could come forward with tanks,
If someone had told me that a state could come forward with tanks, did you hear? They said they are insane. Tanks. Told me that, I would have said, if a general of mine had explained to me that here in the state tanks are made of bricks, they must be seeing everything double or counting wrong. We found factories, just one of them in Kramarovskaya, for example. Right now, we have lost over 30 more tanks. That was 2 years ago. A few hundred, we had no idea. Today, there's a tank factory there that is supposed to employ a significant number of workers in the first phase of its full expansion. We have occupied it, a gigantic party of working masses, but they are like animals. That was 2 years ago. A few hundred, we had no idea. Today, there's a tank factory there that is supposed to employ a significant number of workers in the first phase of its full expansion. We have occupied it in the tunnel area.
yes, when you think that for over 20 years, 25 years, they have given everything for my freedom, just for direction, only direction. That's mentioned earlier, the Mr. President.
I didn't anticipate that before. If I had known, it would have been heavy on my heart. But then I would have been even more composed when it was over, because there was no other option. I was already aware, one after the other, that it had to come now. I only had the nightmare of the criminals on me, because in the Second War, it wouldn't have happened if we had also been broken. We see that better today than we did back then when we were trying to conquer the countries. I actually wanted to carry out the West Offensive in the fall of '39. We see this better today than we did before, when we needed the countries. The constant bad weather has changed things for us because our armament is designed for good weather. It's capable, but only for good weather. We've seen this in the war too. Our weaponry is tailored to the West, and we believed you can't conduct a war in winter. Our German tanks and vehicles weren't tested for winter warfare. We've seen that here in this war as well. Our entire weaponry is, of course, tailored to the West, and we all believed that was the case. That has been our opinion since ancient times, that you can't conduct a war in winter. We also have the German tanks and vehicles, which were not tested to be prepared for winter warfare. Instead, they were put through test drives to prove that you can't conduct a war in winter. It was a different starting point. It was the fall of 1909, and I was 30 years old when I was in practice, and I wanted to start with the old conversion, and I was convinced that I wanted to be able to be a banker in 6 weeks. But it was the kind of weather where you could barely move, and there was constant rain. Now, I know this French territory very well, and even I, along with many generals, couldn't help but think that we probably wouldn't gain that momentum, that we wouldn't be able to utilize the armored units, and that we wouldn't be able to make use of the Air Force with the field airstrips because of the rain. I only knew pandemically. I was in the Great War, 4 years in 1908, and that is how this delay came about. If I had eliminated candidates in the year 39, history would have been different. So I had to wait until 1940, and unfortunately it didn't happen until May. May. It was the first nice day. On the 10th May, I attacked immediately. We issued a directive on May 8th for the attack on the 10th. May, for the attack, we had to make this huge adjustment of our division from the west to the east during the initial occupation. Then we had this task in Norway. At that very moment, would say today, a very big summit came over us, namely the weaknesses. The situation that had arisen in Italy was due first to the North African situation, and then second to the situation in Albania and Greece, which was a huge disaster. We now had to help. This meant for us all of a sudden a tearing apart of our Air Force and a tearing apart of our armored units. While we were in the process of getting the armored units ready for the post, we now had to give up 2 divisions, 2 complete divisions, and it ended up being a third one in a battle. And we will continue to suffer very large losses. There have been bloody battles that took place in the desert. All of this, of course, was also lacking for us later in the East. And it was inconceivable to think otherwise than the decision that remained as it was. No, I had a conversation back then with Molotov. At least it was very clear that Molotov was determined to start the war, and I let him go with the decision, allowing him to come first. That was a tip, because the demands that the changed daily loader will ultimately have to dominate Europe. I found it so easy. It was already in the fall of 1940 that we were constantly faced with the question of whether to let it come to a break. I always advised the Finnish government to negotiate and buy time, to handle things dilatorily, because I was always afraid that Russia would suddenly invade Romania in late autumn and take control of the oil sources, and we wouldn't have been ready by late autumn 1940. If Russia had occupied the Romanian oil sources, then we would have already lost. It was possible to deal with 60 Russian divisions. At that time, we still had no units in Romania. The Romanian government reached out to us late, and what we had would have been ridiculous. They only needed support, wave occupation. I couldn't start a war with our weapons in September or October anymore. That was impossible. We also hadn't prepared the deployment in the East in any way. The units also had to be consolidated in the West first. We first had to get the armament in order, because in the end, we also made sacrifices in our Western campaign. It would have been impossible. We have a large German production, but what the Luftwaffe consumes, what our tank divisions consume, is truly something monstrous. It's a consumption. It goes beyond all imagination. And without the supplies, where at least 4 to 5 million tons of Romanian resources are concerned, we wouldn't be able to carry the burden of the war, and for that I had a great concern. That's why I was also striving to overcome this time through negotiations, until we were strong enough to confront this imperial front. The demands were simply naked blackmail. That was blackmail. The Russians knew that we couldn't help ourselves, that we were tied up in the West. They could blackmail them all. And it was only during Mahler's visit that I briefly acknowledged to them that they were not cooperating. With that, the negotiations changed abruptly. What's coming today? Starting tomorrow, the 4 points regarding Finland's freedom to support against Finnish threats will be addressed. They will indeed intrude on me, claiming that Finland is a threat to them. There would be a plan to take action against the territories of the Soviet Union. They would continue to be pursued, and a great power cannot be threatened in its existence by a small state. So, their existence is not threatened by Finland if they are not actually threatening the religious existence of Finland. We could no longer accept another war in the Baltic Sea as passive spectators. How our position in Romania used to be. We have given the guarantee. Whether the guarantee is also directed against Russia, I don't believe that it is directed against them, because they really have no intention of invading Romania. We have never heard that they intended to invade Romania because they have always said that Bessarabia belongs to them, but they have never stated that they would invade Romania. He says he wants to know precisely whether this guarantee is valid.